Hi everyone. Well, I know that many of you watching this tour are Jewish or very familiar with the Jewish culture, customs, and traditions. However, not all are that familiar with this phenomenon, and also will be sharing this recording on my YouTube channel for at least 1 week in open access. So I see this tour as as a way to also educate about the Jewish culture. So some things may be too obvious to many of you, so please bear with me. But it's also about the diversity of the Jewish culture, the diversity of Jewish communities all across the Russian Empire, from the Ashkenazi Jews of Poland, that, as you know, big parts of Poland were annexed by the Russian Empire after the partitions that took place in the end of the 18th century, second half of the 18th century, and but also the Jews of Georgia, the Jews of Central Asia. Um, those are very interesting communities. Many of the items I would say are quite similar. As you know, Jewish community is the type of community that communities that never really assimilated much, but indeed they try to blend in just from the outside, so to speak. And we will see how they worked it out, how these communities throughout thousands of years managed to preserve their identity, yet also show respect to the communities, to the countries and cultures they lived in. Um, Mister, could you give me a glass of water, please? Thanks so much. So, but first of all, let's walk around the area, and I would like to introduce you to a bit of a history of the museum. It's a remarkable building in the heart of St. Petersburg, built in a very typical classicism style, white columns, very Roman, right? Neoclassicism, and yellow is the typical colors of the official institutions in St. Petersburg built in the 19th century. However, this building is much younger than many of those that you have seen on my tours. Over these years, this building was started only in the early 1900s, 1903, and they finished shortly before the revolution. Officially, they finished with the construction um, with the construction in 1916, but they didn't get around to interior works and also filling the museum with exhibits. It took them much longer. Eventually, the museum only opened in the 1920s and the Soviet times. However, most of the collections exhibited in the museum and also kept in the storage, they date back to the 19th century and the very early 20th century and further on, obviously, as well. When it gets to the Jewish culture, it's mostly end of 19th century, pre-revolutionary times, and mostly purchases, but also donations, official purchases, gifts to the museum. And in the end of the museum, I'm going to tell you a bit more about the people behind the two halls of the Jewish the heritage exhibition. But this building was constructed at times when the Art Nouveau was in full swing and in its prime. But the idea was to build this building so it wouldn't stand out from the ensembles of the Russian Museum and Mikhailovsky Theater. So that's why it is a little bit confusing. And from the very beginning, this building was supposed to be a museum, the Ethnography Museum. The idea to open such an institution came to Nicholas II because his father, Alexander III, he was a avid art collector of Russian art collector, and as you know, his private collection became the core of the Russian Museum collection. And several months ago, I wrapped up about a series of 20 tours on the Russian art and the collection of the Russian Museum. It's available for my sponsors, and they feature a couple of episodes that you would like to have a look at. You can always contact me and I can send you the recordings. And the idea behind the construction of this building was to build it only from local material from different areas of Russia, which makes sense because this is a museum of ethnography of all the peoples that lived on the territory of the empire, the diversity of the empire. So the construction material would come from all over the country. And speaking of the lack of space in the museum, this is the biggest hall in the entire city. It's more than 1,500 square meters. I'm sorry, we do it in meters, but it's quite easy to convert. And sometimes, more often than not, it's empty. Sometimes they arrange some temporary exhibitions or lectures. Also, anyone and any institution can rent out the space for their events and many corporate events. I know that happen in this hall from time to time. As you can see, it can accommodate many people. So, with regard to lack of space arguments, explaining the the museum closing the Jewish exhibition is really this doesn't really hold any water, to be honest. Also, you can see all around the hall, the marble hall. By the way, the marble is from a neighborhood called Alanet, small settlement not far from St. Petersburg. So this is the local pinkish marble. These are different peoples that lived in the country as of early 1900s, obviously, because the entire project was created and developed in those days, early 20th century. And you can see here, by the way, Georgians. That's exactly the Georgian peoples represented here, and the museum is incredible. However, mostly visited, at least it used to be mostly visited by Russian visitors because this is something more familiar to the Russian audience. However, the Jewish part, the Jewish section, well, I lost count how many times I have been there with my visitors because I did a lot of Jewish heritage tours, and I had a tour that was the tour would take about 3 days, and we visited Jewish cemeteries, visited synagogues, some Jewish communities, some Jewish homes, and uh, obviously we would go to see the exhibition. It would take us about a couple of hours, but it would always be there on itinerary. So it's a bummer. It's a bummer. And yeah, I'm just stopping here because it's it's Georgia, and we will be talking also about some Georgian Jews because, as you know, Georgian Jews is a very interesting story, a very interesting phenomenon, and it is represented in the museum with several exhibits. So we are going to mention that too. And mm, well, this hall is just one of several halls in the museum. It's the biggest one for sure, but it's not the only big hall. And the museum is very big, and they only exhibit 30% of the collection. So the collection is enormous, and it was all acquired, as I said, throughout the early 20th century, and it would be redesigned, obviously, in the Soviet times a lot. The memory of the Romanovs and their input in the development of the museum would be forgotten, and they would try to erase it from history. Obviously, this is not the case nowadays, and after the collapse of the Russian Empire, the museum had to, well, change the exhibition of many rooms. And yet, the Ukrainian exhibition, the Ukrainian section is still there. I checked. However, I don't know if the narrative has changed so far. From what I have read on the website, it's still the same, but I'm not sure. The video was filmed for us. I believe this is the early 2023. Oleg went there and I asked him to film the hall. I asked him to film the interiors a little bit and the two rooms of the Jewish Heritage Exhibition. The core of the collection in general are the official purchases. There were a lot of expeditions assigned to various areas of the Russian Empire, uh, arranged exactly with this mission to buy uh, costumes, national costumes, different household objects, furniture, cutlery, different attributes of holidays, letters, photographs, books, documents, and all that you can see in the museum with regards to different peoples, the great variety of peoples and ethnic groups that have ever lived on the territory of the Russian Empire. In the Soviet times, the exhibition was changed largely and also redesigned, and the narrative was definitely different. And we are on the second floor. We are in not the most distant wing of the museum, but it's definitely not in the not in the center of the building. It's not in the heart of it. But I don't see any reason for that. And as I said, only two rooms. The first thing you enter, you'll see on the windows the stained glass with the beginnings of the Ten Commandments. And as I said, this is going to be a tour for general audience, not designed specifically for my Jewish audience, and that's why you have to bear with me just a little bit. So these are the Ten Commandments, the beginning of the Ten Commandments, right? That Moses got the tablets from God from Mount Sinai. And in this hall, we have in the very center of the room, we see Torah scrolls and many items in relation to Torah scrolls and the Torah reading. And as as you know, that the big Russian Empire after the partitions of Poland became the country with the biggest Jewish population, and with regards, Russia became the country with the biggest Ashkenazi population. However, there are many other communities that had been living on the territory of the empire even before century was this is when the big change started happening with regards to after the abolishment of slavery, right? When it started to become gradually, but nevertheless a bit easier for the Jewish communities to integrate. However, the Pale settlement will not be cancelled, which means I would like to remind you that the Pale settlement is the designated area where Jews were allowed to settle because the Jewish were not allowed to settle in the capitals and in many big cities, as well as they didn't were not allowed to. There was a certain limit of to what businesses and trades the Jewish people could do. What we have here is the Torah scroll with the Rimanim on the top. Those are the gifts to the museum, by the way. As I said, there were a lot of official purchases, but also many gifts because people wanted to donate something for the museum, right? To educate the museum visitors about the Jewish culture, and that was a great thing to do. Those are really precious exhibits, and there were two ways in how you could decorate a Torah scroll. It could be a rimonim. Rimon means pomegranate. There would normally be two, and they would be the top of the two sticks on which the Torah scrolls would be fetched. And as you know, Torah scrolls, the Megillah, right? The Megillah is the scroll. This is how you open it, and it would normally be put in a case. It could be in a hard case or in a soft case. You will see the difference. Or instead of Rimanim, it could be Keter Torah, which means a crown. And it, the way Torah scroll should look and how it should be decorated was not really canonized, which means artists were at liberty to decorate it the way they wanted, depending on the budget. The donors could be more creative and less creative. Normally on the Rimanim, which are often also called crowns, there would be some bells, obviously there would be some decorations. It's very common to place lions, because lions are many animals are shown, are used in Jewish art to represent something. They also symbolize different tribes, like lions symbolize the tribe of Judah. Lion is a symbol of Jerusalem. The lions are very much present everywhere. As I said, it's not only Torah scrolls that are available on display in this hall, were available on display. The mezuzah, the small box that would be attached to the doorway of every Jewish home, and inside there would be a piece of parchment with the first two, um, well, sections of the prayer. Shema Israel is one of the most popular and widespread prayers in Judaism. Also, you will see, and the photographs, by the way, almost all of them are from the website of the museum. And this is the Mizrach. So in every Jewish home, there was supposed to be the mezuzah. The Torah scrolls would be kept in Beit Knesset in the synagogue. And in every home also was supposed to be this Mizrach, a small plate of metal, and it will be placed on the eastern wall of the house. Mizrach actually means east, and it will be placed on the wall facing Jerusalem. So traditionally, that's how it would go. It could be it's normally very ornate. It could be a parchment in a beautiful framing. It could be a metal plaque, a tablet, anything. And again, there would be some inscriptions, there would be animals, some different symbols and the Jewish designs, some quotes, Mori Manim from the collection of the museum. They are made of silver. Also, for the items found in created in the times of the Russian Empire, double-headed eagles were also quite common, and it could be for two reasons. The first one is just because that the eagle is also the animal that is quite often used in Judaism, in Jewish art, and the other reason is that, as they said, even though the Jews never assimilated, regardless where they lived, and everything would remain within the community. However, they, on the surface, they definitely try to blend in for many reasons, but also out of respect. And they also knew that times could change very quickly, and they always knew that the Jews would never really be in favor, regardless of the geography. And that was a way for them to show, just in case, just to keep on the safe side, to show the respect and support of the country, of the Russian Empire. Menorahs, absolutely. These are the traditional menorahs with 7 candles. Also, there are a lot of Hanukkiyot. They are the Hanukkah menorahs with 8 candles for 8 days, and an additional one. I will show you some photographs, and also different items. Lots of silver are used in the services. And by the way, there's a lot more mizrahim over there. This was used for the oil in the synagogue to light the menorah. Menorahs would normally be lit with oil, and more mizrahim. These are the boxes for phylacteries, for the set that the man would put on for the prayer. Also in those boxes would be the parchment with the prayers. This is the knife for Brit Milah, for circumcision, another very important ritual for every boy. It is performed on the 8th day after the child is born. So mizrachs could be of different designs, but they would have some similarities, and these are very old ones. Some of them are from 1700, by the way. This is the Megillat Esther. It was a gift to the head of the expedition, Miss Rappaport. I will show you his portrait in the end. And it was kept in a family. Or whatever the parchment would be, they were all these scrolls were extremely expensive. Torah scrolls are extremely expensive. They are all painted by hand, and there are certain rituals. I would say gazillions of rituals that should be followed to make things right. And these interesting things are called yad. Yad means hand, and you can actually see this is a pointer, and it shows you a hand with an index finger because Torah scrolls are that special and sacred. You cannot touch them with your hand. You can just well, it's so easy to damage it. And the only way you can touch a Torah scroll is with this pointer with a yad. Normally, they would be just again as ornate as possible, and it was all well. Here with the ivory, with the silver, some of them, I think that one even had some gemstones in it, right? Yeah, I definitely had. I believe it's lapis. I'm not entirely sure. So these are works of art. And normally every synagogue would have more than one Torah scroll because if something happens to the scroll, it's just a drop of sweat, a drop of water, anything. And whatever something happens, that's it. You can no longer use it. And then you need to bury the Torah scroll. And this is also this is a ceremony how Torah scrolls will be buried because they are sacred. And here you can see two different kinds of Torah scrolls and how they are kept. The hard case, which normally corresponds with the Sephardic tradition, and the soft uh, tissue, well, tissue, it's velvet case wrapping. It's more typical for Ashkenazi communities. Rav Lieberman, with whom I have done quite a number of tours, and I sometimes share the recordings on some holidays, he explained it in the following way that unlike Sephardic communities, Ashkenazi communities had to move and migrate far more often than the Sephardic Jews. This is not obviously excluding the 1492 when they were exiled from Spain, but in general, I believe that there is something to it. So, and there are some differences in approaches in the arrangement of synagogues and some uh, cooking traditions and some other things, the celebrations of holidays. But regardless, be it Ashkenazi, Sephardic, Mizrahi Jews, whatever, this is still one and the same religion with the same Torah scroll, with the same Talmud and Tanakh and everything. So and the same basic mitzvot, right? The commandments. This is mid 19th century. It's Netilah. This is the cup for the Netilat Yadayim, this ritual of purification before prayer in the mornings. There is certain ritual, and I showed it not long ago when I was by the Kotel, by the Western Wall. So the idea would be to purify your body spiritually before you go to the synagogue, before you pray. And this ritual is very old. And you can see those mugs. It's called natlan in Hebrew, everywhere in Israel and in all Jewish places for sure, in the kosher restaurants. Lots of lots of books, as you know. So the Hebrew and the Jewish religion, and the Jews are people of the book. Lots of books, both religious texts, the rabbinic literature, and also um, the Pinkas. I will talk about Pinkas just in a little bit. And now, as we are approaching also other spheres of life, here are very interesting items, by the way. This is something I would say this is quite unique. Not many of these things have been preserved. Even though Judaism is the religion that, on the one hand, I would say, is very clear about monotheism and the only faith in the only God. However, there was still a lot of place for mysticism, Kabbalah, right? The Kabbalah teachings. So it's all about the Jewish mysticism, and yes, there was still place for some superstitions and fears because of the situation in which the Jewish communities would live, and they would always need some extra protection. And this is by the way zoomed in a piece of paper with a protection, kind of a charm to protect a baby, and this would be put it would be a very small piece of paper, maybe of this size, and it would be put in a tissue bag or somewhere, or in the pocket of a child, and the child would be carrying it with them, and this was supposed to protect the child from the evil eye. Also, this is um, one of the items that would be used to protect the child, and it basically looks like a coin. It would all normally it would be kept somewhere on the chest, in the pocket. It's Eastern Europe, and Eastern Europe, part of the Russian Empire. It's the painting made on porcelain, by the way, and beautiful framing. It was a purchase of Mr. Rappaport, who was the head of the committee, and yeah, obviously clothing. And with regard to the way the Jewish people would dress, it's diverse. We will see a lot of different garments, and I will just say for now that uh, the Jews would normally wear the same clothing that the non-Jewish people would wear in a in a given territory. So they wanted to blend in. They didn't want to stand out for many reasons. Well, also to show respect, but also not to cause not to draw any extra attention to themselves. However, there would still be some elements different from the non-Jewish uh, clothing style. We will see some of the differences. These are the not non-religious literature, non-rabbinic literature. These are the Pinkasim. These are the books of Jewish communities where the important events from the life of communities, families would be recorded. The tradition of having the Pinkas books is very old, and it goes back to basically 2,000 years. Well, give or take. And the idea of having the Pinkas books is again to help preserve the identity, not to forget who you are and where you come from. And that's the reason why the Jewish communities would not really assimilate with anyone else. The preservation of the national memory of your culture, of your identity, and Pinkas books was a great source of help. And also that's why for Jews in general, obviously depends on the times, it depends on the geography, but still, it's not sometimes that difficult to trace the genealogy to know more about the roots because many things would be recorded, and it's not so difficult to find information compared to let's say Russians, since we're talking about the Jews in the Russian Empire. For example, when a girl was born, the girl would not even be registered in the church books because she was just a girl. Who would ever want to register a girl? And many other things as well. Sometimes that was just three generations of one family. Information about them could disappear, and as if these people never even lived. On the wall, you see a portrait of one of the rabbis, and next to the portrait, we see the traditional outfit in general of a Jew. This is the shawl, the striped shawl is called talit. This is the talit gadol, the big shawl. There's also a talit katan, a small one. We will see it too. And um, obviously, different communities would dress differently in different ways. And um, we may have certain of those who are not very well familiar with Judaism and the traditions may think that, okay, since they're thinking of Ashkenazi Jews, they probably think of a shtreimel, this very big fur hat, way bigger than this one, and maybe this very black overalls. But it's different because there are multiple Jewish communities, and they all have their I would say features, significant features in general, how they dress, and also many other things that would differentiate them from other groups. But it's still one and the same Judaism, which is important to remember. This is the photo from the website. This is a parochet. This is the piece of it's a curtain basically that would be placed in Arona Kodesh. Basically, it's the altar, right where the Torah scrolls are kept, and it would be, since Torah scrolls are that precious and expensive, the rockets had to be just as gorgeous, and normally they would be donations from some representatives of the community with the with the signatures, with some blessings, and there would be many of these parochets, and many of them could be they would be changed throughout the year, depending on the holidays, the seasons, and the museum has quite a number of those parochets. This is just one of them. And we are done with the first hole. Well, let's see the second one. This is more about life, different stages in life, and also household. And here we can see how diverse the costumes of Jewish communities in the Russian Empire would be, because these are all the Jewish garments, but they don't look like I've just brought you the Hasidic garments. No, very different. And we are talking here about the different Jewish communities living across the Russian Empire, not only the Eastern Europe, but the Central Asia, Uzbekistan, the Bukhara, this community, the Bukhara Jews, even nowadays, and most of them left Bukhara long ago, it is still a very strong community of Bukhara Jews. Their presence in the state is the biggest community of Bukhara Jews is actually in the state, and the ID, the number of tours for of Jewish heritage with Bukhara Jews, and they enjoyed it in the museum, enjoyed it immensely. And this is the garment that would be very similar to what Uzbeki women will be wearing. However, some of the items, such as the tassels, for example, they would give them away. And it's not like something that the Jewish women would want to hide. No, they still prefer to wear something that would make them stand out from the Uzbeki women, but it wasn't that obvious. And these type of clothing would only be worn when the Jewish women and Jewish men had to go out. Like, by looking at this, if you ignore the Torah scrolls and you just look at the people, how could you tell um, the difference, right, between the Jews and Uzbeki? It's, well, that's not so easy. But there are items such as the absence of leather belts, and normally this, by the way, applies to also Georgian Jews, the Mountain Jews, and Bukhara Jews. That there would be not the leather belt for men, but uh, mm, they would be just made from fabric. Yeah, but here we see the Torah scroll, so it kind of makes sense that this is a Jewish community, but it's something quite unexpected, and that's what I was talking about. So this the belt and the head also had certain differences, and it would definitely help them stand out. The same thing here, an interesting belt, but this is a very ornate costume. This is not an everyday, not the casual looks. And again, another belt here, however, with some metal decoration with a metal buckle. Also, you see on the woman this very sheer, beautiful shawl or a scarf, by the way, with golden thread embroidery there. You can't really see it too well, but it's there. So this is something that only the Jewish women will be wearing in Uzbekistan. They will be wearing the hat. Yes, and all married women in Uzbekistan also had to cover their head, but the shawl on top of it would be a Jewish addition, so to speak. And speaking of colors, by the way, this photograph was taken by Sergei Prokudin-Gorsky, the very first photographer who managed to make color photographs. He would take color photographs. And I even did a tour about Sergei Prokudin-Gorsky, his biography, his photography, the heritage, the legacy. I mean, and this is a photo of the Jews. He traveled to Uzbekistan to shoot photographs, several photographs of the city, different communities, and these are the true colors. And this is the a yeshiva, right? The educational facility, the school for boys, and that's what they would wear. And this type of colored clothing was this is how they would kill two birds with one stone. And I suggest we have a Q&A in the end because I just don't want to stop in the very middle and it's all connected. So I guess we just do a longer Q&A in the end. That's the troll. You can see it from a much different angle. Sorry for the glare. There's nothing a leg could do, but at least you get to see lots of other fabrics and designs. So why wearing such a colorful clothing was a goal. You know, on the one hand, yes, they didn't want to stand out, but on the other hand, that was a way of self-promotion because many Jews would be in textile industry. They either would be just the resellers or they also were involved in the production of clothing. And that was the best the best advertisement ever. The colors are insane, absolutely insane, as well as the carpets, shawls, and many other items, some jewelry. Speaking of men, you can see the belt there and the buckle, right? So this is the feature of Uzbeki, but Uzbeki Jewish garment. Copper and copper dishes were used by Bukhara Jews. And normally, the Jews in Israel, because of the kashrut, right? And I will remind you that kashrut is there's a certain list of restrictions and prohibitions with regards to food, but not mixing meat and dairy is one of those, but one of many, many, many other restrictions on how the food is to be prepared, consumed, and what not to mix and what not, and how to cook it in the kosher way. So it's important also to use different sets of kitchenware for dairy products and for meat products. And normally the pottery would be contaminated. So if let's say by mistake you just taken a dairy plate and put meat into it, you have to purify this item because it got contaminated. But with regards to metal dishes, metal cutlery, metal kitchenware, that's totally fine. So it doesn't get contaminated, and you could use it, and that's why it was used in every household of these items, and we can see it also in this exhibition. It also applied to Georgian Jews, mountain Jews too. And next to it, obviously tea, coffee. This is what the Jewish communities would like and consume. But with regards to alcohol, living in a Muslim country, that was not easy. Some things, really many things had to be done in in a very discreet way. However, Jews were not prohibited to produce wine. And that's also important to understand. But it was a lot more challenging when living in a Muslim country. This is, by the way, a tent for Shavuot, for one of the three pilgrimage festivals in Judaism. So, if sorry, for Sukkot, and for Sukkot, for 1 week, a family should be staying in a sukkah, or at least consume food in a tent, in a tabernacle. That's called the Festival of Tabernacles. And one of the elements of Sukkot is etrog, which is a citrus. But in Uzbekistan, they could not find the etrog, so they used melon for it. It was done not for consumption, but for a certain ritual for Sukkot. If you would like to learn more about some of the Jewish holidays, I have recordings of the talks with Rav Lieberman and also a friend of mine, Abigail. So I can share the recordings with you. Look at all these beautiful shawls. This is just what the Jewish communities in Uzbekistan could provide you with. Quite remarkable, and the colors are still amazing. And not only Jews will be buying the fabrics from them, anyone, and also lots of this fabric will be supplied further on to other countries. And that was a great exchange, or just a great trade of different products. Now, the Georgian Jews. So this is the outfit of a Georgian Jew. Mostly what really is different in this garment is the use of silk. Normally, men would not do Georgian non-Jewish men would not be wearing silk gowns. It would normally be made of felt or some uh, cotton or wool, depending on the season. But the Jews would prefer silk, and also again the belt, not a leather strap, not metal, but the just the tissue. Uh, that's I would say the most significant feature. And if you know, you know. If you don't know, obviously it's sometimes it would be very difficult to tell if it's a Jew next to you or it's just a Georgian man. This is the baby coat from the 19th century from Azerbaijan Jews. I don't really see a difference from any other baby pod that I have seen, and I have seen some in the Russian Empire from the Russian Empire times. And these are the two threads just to ensure that the baby would not fall from the cot. This is the Azerbaijani household, Azerbaijan Jews. Again, copper, metal dishes, copper cutlery, kitchenware, very typical for I would say in general for the Jews of Caucasus and Central Asia. These are quite similar feature for all of them. Speaking of weddings, what you see here is we will see some outfit, but also some very important elements of a Jewish wedding, the prenups, right? Because we should thank the Jews for prenups. We should thank Jews for uh, weekends, for the days off at work. It's all thanks to Jews. So ktuba, this is the prenup. Without the prenup, a man and a woman cannot start living together. Also, there is an agreement called Tanaim, which is well, just kind of an engagement agreement. It's not really yet that important document, and it's just kind of an agreement that you also set in writing, but it doesn't have the same power as a tuba. Uh, a divorce were always possible, but in order to be officially divorced, an officially married couple married by halakha, right? The Jewish law, they had to be, their divorce had to be done by, well, by the Jewish court, and they would be given the document called get, which means a divorce. And after the divorce, well, there's just one book on this martial things. I mean, the matrimonial thing, not partial matrimonial thing. And so there were many um, rules for every situation in the life. Basically, it's all put into writing. And let's say if a husband died and his widow, the brother of the deceased had to marry the wife of of his late brother just to save the kin. But well, they didn't have to do it. They didn't have an option not to do it. But in that case, there had to be a special ritual carried out called Salutsa, which means it should be like untying um, and untangling the knot. It's just a sandal that had to be loosened, and well, it's called kalusa. I'm not even sure how to explain it. And after that, a woman is free, and the man and the brother of the deceased doesn't have to marry the widow. These are the garments, the wedding dresses, the wedding gown, the wedding costume for the man. This is talit katan, by the way, normally worn under the waistcoat. They are from Eastern Europe, late 19th century. And this is a beautiful garment with this waistcoat. Actually, it's a very Jewish thing. However, you can also find very similar waistcoats in other cultures. But with regards to Judaism, this is a very uh, special garment. This is also a protection. It also has certain degree of mysticism in it. It's called the bruskil, uh, which is to protect the woman from the evil eye, especially the new mom, especially the breastfeeding mom. Well, I think this makes sense very much. But it doesn't look very Jewish. It looks just like a waistcoat, just like an element of a garment. And speaking of food, yeah, well, looks like I will be overrunning. Luckily, the next store is in 65 minutes from now, but we're going to need, I guess, just 10 minutes or so. What you have just seen, these are the different molds for different cookies and patty pies cooked for different holidays. And there is this Jewish saying that, okay, well, they tried to kill us, but they didn't succeed. So let's go and celebrate and let's go and eat. And yes, indeed, for every Jewish holiday, there's a certain meal and a certain food has very important meaning. Well, just for example, this is the Homentaschen, right? The triangular pastry with poppy seeds, but it could be anything, which is traditionally consumed for Purim. It represents the years of Aman, the leader who wanted to kill all the Jews. It's all about the survival. It's all about the perseverance and resilience of the Jews. Or this interesting, this is the pastry that looks like a staircase, right? And it's interesting also, just like it works with the dress code, the same works with the kitchen, with the cooking. It's interesting because the Jewish communities would be definitely picking up lots of dishes. They would be copying, cooking the same dishes that would be popular in their respective cultures that they lived in, but they would, of course, cook it in a Jewish way, right, according to kashrut. And it was very this type of cookies were very common. Not the cookies, pastry. It would be very common in Christian communities for the ascension, just to commemorate the ascension of Jesus. However, the Jews in the Russian Empire, I'm not saying it was done exclusively or everywhere. I mean, it was just this is something that was common for the Russian Empire. They would be cooked for Yom Kippur, for the Judgment Day. So these are the Homentashen things. The Reisele, this is a very common, actually, this is a very old Jewish art. Again, mostly coming from Europe, coming from Eastern Europe, and it is very similar. This type of Reisele, the decorations made from paper, the paper cut decoration. This is the art. This is a very old Jewish art, but it also, the design looks very similar to the designs done by Ukrainians, by Southern Russians. So some traditions, some art techniques would be also picked up. So as I said, it's not like that the Jewish communities lived in total isolation. This is also not right. No, obviously not, because if you needed to survive, you have to do this widely. This is about Pesach, Passover. It's another pilgrimage festival in Jewish calendar. And for Pesach, there's also certain food to be consumed. And the Pesach starts with a seder meal, which is a certain order of products that should be consumed to commemorate the exodus from Egypt. Some sweet food, some sour food, bitter food to represent the hardships of the Jewish people while they were in the desert. And but music is also an important part. And this is the klezmer, the musician, and there are lots of different musical instruments, but not a guitar. All sorts of instruments. They were they were purchases, mostly purchases for the museum, and there's quite a great collection of musical instruments, by the way, that belong to the Jewish communities. So all these items were purchased from someone, not just from a shop. It would be it used to belong to people, and or if those were presents. But as well, it used to belong to someone. So it's not just a new musical instrument. It's not just a new saxophone. This is something that belongs to someone. People play this instrument. It plays music at a wedding or at some celebration. And so klezmer, it was the big part of the Ashkenazi culture in general, the music. And as you know, music and dances is very important for Hasidic Jews. Um, so music is a big part of Jewish life. That's undoubtedly, as well as art, uh, but not this much for sure. These are the kippah. Oh, excuse me, what I say? The kippah. The kippah. The the head. The head cover. So yarmulke is another word that one can use, and they are quite ornate. Again, sometimes, and that was the case with even with the Ottoman Palestine, right? That's the same story. Men, not non-Muslims, were not allowed to wear any attributes of their own religion, the Judaism, the Christianity, no crosses, no kippahs, and all men in the cities had to wear the tarbut. It's red hat with a tassel. However, many still would put on the yarmulke inside and hide it, so that was okay. And the same here. So from the outside, it could look just like a hat, but actually they had another meaning. Another garment. Well, this is also a praying shawl. You can see that. The praying shawls normally come in black and white stripes. However, you can also find tchelet, the blue color. What is important that there had to be the talit should always have a certain um, also there's some certain rules, but the colors can be different. Well, a variety of colors, so to speak. This is the Hanukkah, the Hanukkah menorah, as I said. Unlike the traditional menorah, it has the uh, place for 8 candles, and also the serve serving one, the shamash, that you would use to light all the menorahs. And this is celebrated for Hanukkah. Again, you could see the lions there, and you could also see double-headed eagles. So you know that this was made in the Russian Empire. These are the incense boxes, very typical for Ashkenazi Jews. After Shabbat, just as a part of this tradition, a ritual, just before the end of it, you can just smell some spices that would just to save them, to sever the memory of a good Shabbat before the next week begins. And normally these spice boxes would come in different sizes, different. It's just work of art. They would often use some jewelry, some precious metals. Again, it all just depended on the budget. Works of art, honestly. Um, so what else that I did not uh, cover? This is also the wedding outfit. The women. So we spoke about the men a little bit, something about the women. Obviously, covering the head for a married woman was a big deal too. It was important. But also those could be wigs. All this could be hats and wigs too. And the museum has tons of those things. By the way, I mean wigs and different hat scarves and shawls that the Jewish women would wear. These are the the bruskil again, just for protection. It could come just not, it could look not like a waistcoat, but like a hoshen that that the priests in the temple would wear also on their chest. So it could be just one piece that you would put on your chest. It could be different, but the bruskil is something quite special. This is another bruskil that looks like just like a waistcoat. This is also from the Russian. This is the Russian Empire, Eastern Europe, early 20th century. Mm, I would say that it's a shame that the museum only gave two halls to the exhibition because there is a lot more in the storage that deserves to be shown. And just in 2020, there was a very big campaign. It was the initiative of the Ethnography Museum, by the way, and some Jewish communities to collect photographs of the Jewish communities across the Russian Empire, to digitize them, to scan them, and upload it in a database. And it was done, and it's I haven't checked it for a long time. I don't know what what's the situation with it nowadays, but at least in 2021, the project was a great success, and it was highly acclaimed. It was given lots of awards, lots of state support because it was the preservation of history, of the heritage. So that was a great initiative. And after all that, just such a shame that this exhibition was closed. That's the map of the Russian Empire, and these are the territories with the Jewish populations. And well, this is the territory with with the most dense Jewish population. There would be more, and in the Soviet times, they obviously would look very different. Um, yeah, that's just to show you the what's the explications of the map. And as I said, in the second half of the 19th century, many changes would take place. And one more part, well, another part of life is death and burial. So no matter how rich or how poor a Jew was, everyone would look the same when they're dead. They would be wrapped in white. They would be dressed in white clothing, and traditionally, without coffin, without a sarcophagus, would be put in in the soil and buried. That's basically how it would be. Obviously, in diaspora, in galut, which means in diaspora, everyone would try to put small um, uh, bags with the soil from Jerusalem, but that was not always possible. And normally, if that was if it was possible, if it was available, it would be put normally under the head of the deceased. But also, you may remember there were different traditions. There were different burial practices. But with regards to the Russian Empire, that's how it normally would be in the at least 19th century and 20th century. So the people behind this exhibition, the person in charge was the Shlomo Rapaport or Shimon Ansky. As Ansky, this is his kind of a pen name. He was one of the initiators of this campaign because he saw that there were many expeditions assigned to different areas of the Russian Empire, and he just thought to join the campaign, and he was given permission to do that, but then he needed to find the money for purchasing of all these things, for the travels, for the transportation, and he addressed the Ginsburg family, who were who were one of the wealthiest families in the Russian Empire. With all I mentioned Ginsburg with the connection with the synagogue because this was the Ginsburg that gave the biggest share of the money, and he was the one who negotiated the construction of the synagogue eventually in St. Petersburg, and also many other things. And yes, obviously, David Ginsburg gave a lot of money. He was the biggest donor for the collection. Again, as I said, luckily there were a lot of presents and donations to the exhibition. Yet there was quite a lot of money spent to put it all together. And now it's such a shame that it's going to be closed from public. And I just hope that people would boycott that exhibition or at least uh, address the museum administration to resume the Jewish exhibition. Anyway, so let's have a Q&A. Sorry for the overrunning by 10 minutes. In 50 minutes from now, I'm going to be talking about the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. We're going to be talking a lot about the history of the church. We'll start the exploration of the church, but there is also a lot to talk about before we go there. Some history, lots of challenging episodes from the history that really need to be clarified. As you know, there was a very in-depth tour of Via Dolorosa, the way of suffering of Christ, in Jerusalem. All the previous episode from the last weekend is available on my YouTube channel. As for all the other episodes, they're always available for my sponsors. Let me know if you have any questions. And so here is the link. The two episodes of Via Dolorosa are already up on my website. There are a bunch of other links. There are a bunch of other tours already scheduled, and several more will be added within this next few days. It's just been a bit busy here with Grisha's birthday, and yes. Thank you so much, Dolly. I would appreciate your support. You can send me a PayPal donation or you could buy me a coffee. And I'm happy that you joined. I'm happy that you're interested in what I'm showing you. Probably the Russian Empire and the Jewish culture is not something that is, I would say, very popular nowadays. But nevertheless, this is something that has always interested me. And well, I'm happy that you're here. Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you so much. The collection's outstanding, right outside. Thank you. Um, can exhibition be kept open, Robert? I have no idea, but they closed it. It's already on their website. This information is. They still have the info about the exhibition on the website, about some of the exhibits, but in the news on the website, it said there uh, that they closed it. Thank you, Ronaldin. Thank you so much. Yeah, there is a lot to take in, especially if you're not familiar with Jewish culture, with the Jewish life. And as I said from the very beginning, this is the educational tour. This is for wider audiences, and I want this to be seen by someone else. And if it is just one person just comes across this video on YouTube and watches it and learns something, well, it's great. So if it happens, just let me know because I'm going to share this recording on my YouTube shortly. How representative of the last days of the Jewish community in Russia is the film Fiddler on the Roof? How represent actually it's it's only about one community, so it's only about the Ashkenazi community. It is quite representative, but it's way more than that. It's just one community, it's just one region, but there's a lot more. Yeah, it's a very good film. It's very representative, and not only exclusively about the Russian Empire. I would say in general, the Ashkenazi Jews of Eastern Europe. Yeah, pretty much. Thank you so much, Delors. Thank you, dear. My husband says it's for Jews in Polish Russia. Yeah, so that's exactly one of the communities that I've been talking about. Exactly. Yes. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for your support. Yeah, Ronaldin. Exactly. So I will be happy to see you in Jerusalem in 45 minutes from now to talk about Church of the Holy Sepulchre, walk around the church, talk about the symbols and different things around the church. That would definitely be I would sometimes really eye openers as well, some jaw dropping facts, eye opening facts, and yeah, well. It definitely needs some timeline and explanation before you go to the Holy Sepulchre itself. So that's what we're going to be doing tonight. I'll see you soon. Thank you everyone for everything and bye bye.